you. Senator Daines.
Thank you, Senator Crapo. Cindy and I are parents of 4 children. We have 3 grandchildren, and supporting the mental health needs of our children is a major concern of mine, especially at this time of our nation's history. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly challenged our children in so many ways, oftentimes profound. It's upended how they attend school. It's changed how they interact with their friends. It's had a profound effect on mental health. From universal masking to stay-at-home orders, we're seeing how these draconian policies are affecting our children. After 2 years of virtual learning, enforced physical distancing, many schools across the country still have not returned to normal, and children are falling behind. More children and teenagers are struggling with mental health issues, and suicide attempts are on the rise. There's a wise old proverb that says a parent is only as happy as their unhappiest child. And it's so true. You can have 4 children, 3 are doing well, but the one that's struggling is right where the parents are emotionally and what consumes how we think about our kids. The New York Times published an article in the beginning of January, and I think the title said, "No Way to Grow Up," and it highlights how many pandemic policies have failed our children. I think that title really does sum it up, "No Way to Grow Up." What I'm hearing is that lockdowns and closures have been questionable public health measures, and at the end of the day have been harmful to our children. When I talk to people across Montana, I hear stories about the mental health struggles that come from lockdowns, from isolation. According to one study, lockdowns have reduced schooling, increased unemployment, reduced economic activity, and contributed to political unrest and domestic violence. Dr. Murthy, do you agree that lockdowns and social isolation have helped contribute to some of the mental health challenges we're seeing today?
Well, Senator, I appreciate that question from a fellow parent and a grandparent, as I understand it. Look, I've spent years focused on the issue of isolation and loneliness. It has harmful effects on the mental and physical well-being of our children. And this severe disruption that we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, particularly with school closures, but with the uncertainty that kids had about their future, with the 160,000 plus children who have lost a caregiver, with kids seeing the friends, and family members who had been impacted by this pandemic, that has taken a huge toll on our children. What we have an obligation to do is to use the power of our science, our knowledge, our experience to tackle this pandemic with a scalpel instead of a blunt axe, to put in place measures that can help protect people, but recognizing that the cost of major disruptions to our kids' lives is significant. And that's why we have to use layers of precaution that can allow them to stay in school. It's why I'm glad that 95% of schools are now open for in-person learning, that 95 plus were open in the fall of 2021. Those included my kids, who were finally able to go back to school, and I was grateful for it.
Thank you for that thoughtful answer, Doctor. Last year, the Biden administration issued a rule to require universal masking for toddlers attending Head Start. This heavy-handed mandate targeted Montana's most disadvantaged children, which is why I urged HHS to actually rescind that. I'm also concerned how this kind of pandemic policy will impact child development. A study from Brown University found that face masks and other social distancing measures in school or daycare may be associated with delayed language development among children. Additionally, referrals of children to speech therapy have been on the rise since the pandemic began. Dr. Murthy, how do we undo the damage caused by pandemic policies to address the health challenges facing our children?
Well, Senator, look, I share your concern about the well-being of our kids, and I think getting back as close as possible to a sense of normalcy is going to be important for our children. They need to be able to play with their friends. They need to be able to see the people they love. They need to be able to be in school and learn in school. And Part of, I think, how we do that is recognizing, number one, we've got more tools to do that than ever before. We now, thank goodness, have medications and vaccines and boosters that can reduce the likelihood that people will lose their life or end up in the hospital, and that includes our children. We now have more tests and other mitigation measures, ventilation, masks, et cetera, that we know can be used in targeted ways to reduce spread. As cases come down, Senator, as our hospitals begin to see their caseloads drop, I think we will be in a place where we can consider pulling back on some of the measures that exist now in terms of mitigation. And so I'm hopeful that we will get there, but we've already made a lot of progress compared to last year. A year ago today, less than half of our schools were open. Less than half of our kids were learning in person. Now that number is at over 95%. We got to get it as close to 100%.
And that's progress. And I am concerned that as we look at this, the healthcare challenge we face with the pandemic, we've not been looking at the biggest picture.
And I just say to my friend, these are important issues. We still have Senator Casey.
Okay,
We've got
right.
to get
Dr. Murphy,
Dr.
thank
Murthy,
you.
and we'll follow up with
Senator.
our colleague. And thank my colleague for being willing to be part of the task forces as well. It's going to be very important. Senator Casey's